we started rehearsals, and I don't know, for those of you who aren't actors, how rehearsal processes generally start is everybody gets called in the first day, and you all do this, like a very bleary-eyed meet and greet. As actors, we don't like to get up in the morning, so we're like sleepy but excited, which is always a combination. And then you just get into the room and you start to do the work. Usually in a show you'll start from the beginning. Or if there's like, in this case it's a musical, so you start with a big group number, which is usually the only number. But in this case, Michael Greif, our director, got up in front of us and said, I want to start with a song that opens the second act. It's called Seasons of Love. And while you listen to it, keep this in mind, that even though it essentially takes place at a funeral, it's very much about celebration. And I thought that was a pretty interesting thing to think about in the first place. And then Tim, our musical director, started playing the song, and he played those chords, which I'm sure all of you are very familiar with. And I don't know if you can locate for yourselves the first time you heard that song, or if it had an impact on you the first time you heard that song. I can say for myself and all of us in that room, those chords and then those lyrics that Tim started singing to us were some of the most extraordinary lyrics and chords of any song I'd ever heard in any context, let alone musical theater. And then we started singing together, and we started singing the harmonies together. And there was a sound and a spirit and an energy in that room that was absolutely thrilling. And I looked over to Jonathan, and he was completely lit up. And that was what I've come to know now as the beginning of what has turned into a lifelong, profound relationship with this piece of theater that has changed so many lives. Was that first, this little boombox experience didn't quite touch that. This was the beginning, really. And to know that I was going to be part of something that was saying something so direct and profound and beautiful about the human experience in a rock opera was a huge, wonderful surprise. So that was the beginning. But then, so that night, I had the rest of the libretto and the score and the other cassette tapes of the other songs. And I went home to my little cramped East Village apartment, and I popped the tapes in my boombox, and I started listening to the rest of the score. And it was all pretty cool, but it was really the end of the first act that the next big moment of revelation jumped out at me. So, reading along, everything's fun and cool, and then the end of the first act comes while people in. And at first I was like, oh, cool, I looked at the page, and it says Mark, and then there's a big chunk of text. I was like, oh, that's cool. Didn't yet know I get to dance on tables one time, which I recommend. So, I'm singing along, or reading along and listening, and really enjoying the kind of the fun, the groove, the kind of like Linus and Lucy groove underneath the song. That's the Linus and Lucy, remember that one? And the rhyming is fun, and it's very clever and cool, but it's really towards the end of the song when the whole company together sings out to the audience, to faggots, lesbians, dykes, cross-dressers, to people living with, not dying from disease, that he among us without sin be the first to condemn la vie bohème. And I was like, it was like a jolt coming out of my little boombox, hitting me in the face. This is 1994, so yes, there's been a lot of progress in the meantime. And, in New York City, things weren't so terrible for gay and lesbian people, generally speaking. I mean, people were pretty out and proud, and there wasn't a lot of, adversity. There was certainly AIDS was happening. It wasn't just affecting gay and lesbian people, certainly, but it was very much in the thick of all of that in 1994. But, to be a part of a musical theater piece that was being that brazenly outspoken and with such joy, that was the part, that I couldn't necessarily have articulated in that moment, but part of, to me, Jonathan's genius was that he could put that political language inside of a song that was incredibly catchy, that by then you would have fallen in love with these characters, that they've earned the right to say this to people, and it's like a dare. It's like, I dare you not to embrace me with your whole heart, was so excited to know that I was going to be a part of something that was putting that into the world. And to know that also, and that, so just not only the fact it's Leslie Sykes, part of the conversation, which, part of that whole thing in what's certainly, I think it's still called as queer politics, but the taking back of those words, to take back faggot, to take back dyke, Leslie, as a way to empower the community. Like, okay, if you want to call me that, I am that. It's a different kind of sort of turning it back around. Alongside of that is this other piece of it, which is to people living with not dying from disease. And in 1994, this was a revolutionary idea, that it was possible to live a full life in the face of AIDS or cancer, that being ill didn't mean being dead. That it was the beginning of that conversation. There was, up until that point, really the language around long-term illness was victim. Like, literally, the word was used, victim. And you don't see that anymore. It's people with AIDS. It's people with cancer. It's survivors. And that was the beginning of that was the cusp of that transformation. And language is everything. And to be a part of something that was putting that language in the world was also